Stop scrolling and listen to today's Arcturian Council message. Starseed Alert. The Arcturian Council detected your coherence. The planetary transition has begun. This transmission does not arrive gently, and it is not here to comfort the sleeping mind. It arrives like a sudden rupture in the familiar timeline, because something has already shifted and your nervous system felt it before your logic could explain it. The Arcturian Council is speaking now because the window for passive observation has closed. You are not watching this by accident. Your energetic signature intersected with a frequency corridor that only opens when a soul reaches a specific coherence threshold. That threshold has been crossed. Whether this excites you or unsettles you depends on how prepared you are to remember who you were before this life fragmented your awareness. The planet itself is undergoing a recalibration, and those whose inner signals are stabilizing amid the chaos are being quietly flagged. This is not about fear or praise, it is about function. You are either resonant with the transition, or you will experience it as collapse. The shock you feel is recognition, not danger. If you feel this message pressing against your chest or ringing in your ears, that is confirmation, not imagination. Type "I am ready" in the comments to consciously claim this message. The Council acknowledges that many of you were conditioned to dismiss moments like this as fantasy, coincidence, or psychological projection. That conditioning was deliberate, and it served a purpose during earlier phases of planetary density. But that phase is dissolving now, and the mechanisms that once suppressed remembrance are destabilizing. You may notice time behaving strangely, emotions surfacing without clear cause, or sudden detachment from narratives that once defined your identity. These are not symptoms of confusion, they are indicators of recalibration. Your coherence was detected not because you are perfect, enlightened, or superior, but because you are becoming internally consistent. Thought, emotion, and intention are beginning to align, and that alignment creates a measurable signal. The shock is not that this is happening, but that it is happening faster than anticipated. The Council emphasizes that resistance will feel like pressure, while surrender will feel like expansion. Neither path is punished, but only one is efficient. If this resonates and you feel the weight of truth in it, type "I remember" to anchor the signal. Understand this clearly: the planetary transition is not a single event you will watch on a screen or read about afterward. It is an ongoing divergence of experiential realities occurring simultaneously within the same physical environment. Two people can stand side by side and experience entirely different worlds based on their internal coherence. This is why some feel escalating chaos while others feel an unexpected calm beneath the noise. The Arcturian Council does not intervene dramatically because the transition is governed by resonance, not authority. No one is coming to save or destroy you, you are aligning yourself moment by moment. The shock comes from realizing that neutrality is no longer possible. Every choice, thought loop, and emotional reaction feeds a trajectory. You are not being judged, but you are being sorted by frequency. This may sound confronting because it removes the comfort of delay. Yet it is also liberating, because it returns agency to you. If you feel this truth tightening your focus, type "I choose alignment" to claim your role. Many starseeds expected a dramatic external signal, a craft in the sky, a voice from the clouds, or a sudden global revelation. Instead, the signal arrived internally, subtle but relentless, dismantling false structures from the inside out. This is the shock most did not anticipate. Awakening is not glamorous, it is destabilizing. Relationships may fracture, careers may feel hollow, and belief systems may collapse without warning. The Council confirms that this is not failure, it is extraction. What cannot resonate with the incoming frequencies cannot remain intact. You are not losing your life, you are shedding density. The discomfort you feel is the friction between who you were conditioned to be and who you are remembering yourself to be. This phase feels lonely because collective validation lags behind individual realization. But isolation is temporary. Coherence attracts coherence. If you are feeling seen and unsettled at the same time, type, "I trust the process," to ground this message. Here is the part that shocks even seasoned seekers. Not everyone who identifies as awakened will transition smoothly. Awareness without coherence creates distortion, not liberation. The Council detected your coherence because you are integrating, not collecting concepts. Integration means you are living the frequencies you claim to understand. It shows in how you regulate your emotions, how you respond under pressure, and how willing you are to release identities that no longer serve growth. The planetary field amplifies whatever is stabilized within you. If fear is stabilized, fear expands. If clarity is stabilized, clarity propagates. This is why some teachings will suddenly feel hollow while others ignite something wordless inside you. Discernment is becoming instinctual, not intellectual. Trust that instinct. If you feel a quiet confidence emerging beneath uncertainty, type, "I stand firm," to claim this stage of activation. You may have noticed that old timelines are replaying themselves at accelerated speed, unfinished conversations resurfacing, unresolved emotions demanding attention, or patterns repeating until they are consciously interrupted. This is not punishment, it is compression. The planetary field is collapsing unnecessary loops to free energy for the transition. What once took years to process may now surface in days or hours. This intensity shocks the nervous system, but it also creates unprecedented opportunity. Resolution is faster now, but avoidance is more costly. The Arcturian Council emphasizes that compassion for yourself during this phase is not indulgence, it is functional maintenance. You are recalibrating a multidimensional instrument, not fixing a broken machine. Rest when needed, speak truth when it trembles, and release what no longer fits without resentment. If you recognize this acceleration in your own life, type, "I release the old," to consciously participate. Another destabilizing truth emerges here. The transition does not require everyone to awaken at once. It requires enough coherent nodes to stabilize the field so others may choose clarity when ready. You are not responsible for saving anyone, convincing anyone, or dragging anyone forward. That belief itself is a distortion rooted in spiritual ego. The Council detected your signal because you are learning to hold your frequency without force. This quiet steadiness is far more influential than dramatic declarations. You may feel called to step back from debates, explanations, or performances of spirituality. That withdrawal is not apathy, it is refinement. Influence now travels through presence, not persuasion. If this relieves pressure you didn't realize you were carrying, type, "I hold my frequency," to seal this understanding. As coherence increases, you may experience moments of profound stillness followed by waves of intense emotion. This oscillation is not regression, it is recalibration. The nervous system is learning to hold higher bandwidth without overload. The shock here is that peace and intensity can coexist. You are not required to feel blissful to be aligned, nor calm to be clear. Authenticity is the stabilizer now. Suppression creates noise, honesty creates signal. The Council advises against spiritual bypassing during this phase. Feel what arises, but do not become it. Observe without drowning. This skill is developing rapidly within you, even if it feels clumsy at first. If you are learning to witness yourself with less judgment, type "I observe with clarity" to affirm this shift. The planetary transition also alters how manifestation functions. Desire without coherence dissipates, while intention rooted in alignment moves with startling speed. This can feel shocking when things fall away faster than expected or arrive before you feel ready. Timing is no longer negotiated by the ego, it is synchronized by resonance. You may need to release control narratives and trust a deeper intelligence moving through you. This does not mean abandoning responsibility, it means redefining it. You are responsible for alignment, not outcomes. Outcomes are byproducts now. If this reframes how you view effort and trust, type "I align and allow" to integrate this truth. This concludes the first phase of the transmission, but not the message itself. What you have received so far is a diagnostic pulse, confirming readiness and revealing areas of resistance without condemnation. The shock was intentional, not to frighten you, but to interrupt passive consumption. You are not here to watch, you are here to participate. As this series continues, deeper layers will activate, and the momentum will intensify. If you feel a quiet certainty beneath the intensity, that is your coherence stabilizing further. Do not rush, do not compare, and do not doubt the subtle knowing that brought you here. If you are still present and receptive at this point, type "I claim this transmission" to consciously anchor the next phase. As this transmission deepens, the Arcturian Council brings forward a truth that many resist at first because it destabilizes familiar hierarchies. No external authority can validate your awakening anymore. Teachers, channels, systems, and symbols once served as mirrors, but mirrors are no longer sufficient when the source light is activating from within. You may feel disoriented when old guidance suddenly feels distant or irrelevant. This is not betrayal or abandonment, it is graduation. The shock lies in realizing that certainty now emerges internally, without the emotional reassurance of consensus. This phase demands radical self-honesty. You will notice when something is misaligned not through guilt, but through energetic contraction. Likewise, aligned actions create an immediate sense of expansion, even if the mind protests. This sensitivity is not fragility, it is precision. You are becoming finely tuned, and fine instruments cannot tolerate distortion. If you are noticing that your inner compass is louder than external opinions, type "I trust my inner signal" to affirm this recalibration. The Council also addresses the increasing sensation of emotional detachment that some of you find unsettling. This detachment is not numbness, nor is it indifference. It is the loosening of emotional hooks that once anchored you to repetitive cycles. You may still feel deeply, but without the same compulsive identification. The shock comes when you realize you can witness drama without being pulled into it, even when it involves people you love. This does not mean you care less, it means you are no longer feeding energetic loops that thrive on reactivity. Compassion now expresses itself through clarity rather than sacrifice. This shift may challenge those who unconsciously relied on your emotional availability to stabilize themselves. Resistance from others does not indicate your error, it reflects their adjustment. If you feel guilt surfacing alongside relief, know that this is a common threshold response. If you recognize this emotional reorientation within yourself, type "I release attachment" to stabilize this phase. Another aspect of the planetary transition involves the restructuring of memory. Not memory as data, but memory as identity. You may notice that certain past experiences no longer feel personal, as if they happened to someone else. This can be unsettling because the ego relies on narrative continuity to maintain control. The Council confirms that this distancing is intentional. As coherence increases, your consciousness is no longer bound to linear self-stories. You retain access to lessons without remaining entangled in their emotional charge. The shock is subtle but profound. Suffering loses its authority as proof of growth. You are not required to relive pain to justify wisdom. Integration allows release without denial. If you feel your past loosening its grip without being erased, type "I am not my history" to claim this liberation. With this memory shift comes a recalibration of purpose. Many starseeds expected purpose to arrive as a singular mission or dramatic calling. Instead, it emerges as moment-to-moment alignment. The Council emphasizes that purpose is not something you do, it is something you embody. This realization can feel anticlimactic at first, even disappointing. The shock lies in understanding that saving the world does not require spectacle. Your frequency stabilizes fields simply by being maintained. Small interactions, silent choices, and unseen integrity ripple further than grand gestures fueled by distortion. This dismantles the ego's need for recognition and replaces it with quiet certainty. If you are learning to value alignment over validation, type "I embody my purpose" to anchor this truth. As alignment strengthens, you may experience disruptions in sleep patterns, vivid dreams, or moments of sudden insight that arrive without context. These are not random, they are signs of interdimensional processing. The planetary field is thinner now, and information moves more freely across layers of awareness. The shock here is that guidance may arrive without language, through sensation, imagery, or knowing. Trying to force interpretation can create distortion. Allow meaning to unfold naturally, even if it takes time. Your system is learning a new mode of communication that bypasses linear logic. Journaling, grounding practices, and time in nature can help integrate these downloads without overload. If your inner world feels more active than your outer life right now, type "I allow integration" to support this phase. The Council now highlights a critical distinction: discomfort does not equal misalignment. Many are conditioned to equate alignment with ease at all times, but transition requires adaptation, and adaptation involves friction. The shock comes when aligned paths still demand courage, boundaries, and endings. Ease will return, but only after unnecessary weight is shed. This is why some aligned choices feel heavy at first. They are dismantling long-standing distortions. Trust the deeper calm beneath the surface discomfort. If a choice brings relief after the fear passes, it is aligned. If it brings anxiety that compounds over time, it is not. Your body will tell you before your mind understands. If you are learning to listen to this somatic intelligence, type, "I listen to my body," to reinforce this awareness. Social structures are also undergoing recalibration, and this will increasingly affect your sense of belonging. You may feel less inclined to participate in conversations rooted in division, outrage, or performative identity. This withdrawal can feel isolating, especially when others interpret it as disengagement. The Council reassures you that coherence often precedes community. New connections form when frequency stabilizes, not when effort is forced. This interim solitude is functional, not punitive. It allows your signal to clarify without interference. When resonance matches, connection will feel effortless and mutual. If you are in a phase of selective silence and discernment, type, "I honor my space," to affirm this stage. Another shock emerges in how you perceive authority and systems. Structures once viewed as stable may now appear hollow, inefficient, or misaligned. This does not mean they will collapse overnight, but their influence over your psyche is weakening. The Council notes that sovereignty is returning incrementally, not through rebellion, but through disengagement from illusion. You may comply where necessary without internalizing legitimacy. This inner decoupling is subtle yet powerful. It allows you to function within systems without being defined by them. If you feel less emotionally invested in proving, defending, or opposing structures, type, "I claim sovereignty," to integrate this shift. The transition also alters your relationship with fear. Fear may still arise, but it no longer dominates decision-making. Instead, it becomes informational, signaling areas of attachment or unknown variables. The shock is realizing that courage now feels quieter. There is less adrenaline, less drama, and more steadiness. This can feel unfamiliar if you once equated intensity with aliveness. True stability is subtle but enduring. If you are noticing fear without being consumed by it, type, "I move with courage," to stabilize this pattern. This segment of the transmission prepares you for a deeper activation ahead. The Council emphasizes that what you are experiencing is not linear progression but spiral integration. Themes may reappear at higher levels, asking for refined responses rather than repetition. Do not interpret recurrence as failure. Each cycle offers an opportunity for mastery. If you feel more capable, less reactive, and more present even amid challenge, coherence is strengthening. You are not late, behind, or unworthy. You are precisely where your frequency has placed you. If you are ready to continue into the next phase of this transmission, type, "I continue with clarity," to consciously claim what comes next. As the transmission progresses, the Arcturian Council introduces a destabilizing realization that many avoid until it becomes unavoidable. The version of you that survived is not the version of you that will lead. Survival strategies, hypervigilance, overgiving, emotional armor, constant proving, were adaptive responses to a denser reality. But as the planetary frequency shifts, these same strategies become distortions. The shock comes when you notice that what once kept you safe now keeps you constrained. Letting go of survival identity can feel like stepping into vulnerability without a map. Yet this is precisely where coherence stabilizes. You are no longer required to brace against life, you are learning to move with it. This does not mean naivety or passivity. It means discernment replaces defense. If you feel exhaustion lifting as you release the need to constantly guard yourself, type "I release survival mode" to consciously complete this transition. The Council now addresses the recalibration of intuition, which is becoming less dramatic and more consistent. Many expected intuition to feel like sudden flashes or mystical visions. Instead, it is evolving into a steady undercurrent of knowing that informs even mundane choices. The shock lies in how ordinary alignment feels once stabilized. There is less excitement, but more trust. You may find yourself choosing differently without overthinking, declining invitations without guilt, or speaking truth without rehearsing it internally. This quiet decisiveness is a sign of integration. Intuition no longer interrupts your life, it becomes the way your life moves. If you are noticing this subtle but powerful shift in how you decide and act, type "I move with knowing" to anchor this refinement. Another layer of the planetary transition involves grief, not for loss alone, but for illusions released. You may grieve versions of the future you once imagined, roles you thought you would play, or people you hoped would awaken alongside you. This grief can feel confusing because nothing tangible has been taken away. The shock is realizing that grief can accompany growth without indicating regret. You are not mourning failure, you are honoring transformation. Allow this grief to move through without attaching narrative or blame. It is a cleansing current, not a setback. If you feel moments of sadness arising alongside peace, type "I allow the grief" to let this process complete naturally. The Council emphasizes that coherence does not isolate you from challenge, it alters how challenge is metabolized. Problems may still arise, but they no longer define your internal state. You may notice an increased ability to respond rather than react, to pause rather than escalate. This can feel unsettling if your identity was once shaped by intensity or conflict. The shock comes when you realize you do not miss the chaos. Calm becomes preferable to stimulation, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. This preference signals a stabilized nervous system, capable of holding higher frequencies without overload. If you are valuing peace more than validation or drama, type "I choose calm" to reinforce this alignment. As coherence strengthens, you may experience a diminishing interest in explaining yourself. This is not withdrawal or arrogance, it is efficiency. The Council notes that explanation often serves to seek permission or avoid misunderstanding. When alignment stabilizes, these needs dissolve. You act from clarity, not justification. Others may project narratives onto your silence, but their interpretations are no longer yours to manage. The shock lies in how freeing this feels, and how uncomfortable it may be for those accustomed to your transparency. Boundaries now form organically, without hostility. If you feel less compelled to narrate your choices or defend your path, type "I stand without explanation" to claim this sovereignty. The planetary transition also recalibrates how you experience time. Linear urgency begins to dissolve, replaced by a sense of right timing. You may feel less rushed yet more productive, less busy yet more fulfilled. This paradox shocks the conditioned mind, which equates urgency with importance. The Council affirms that urgency is a distortion of scarcity consciousness. As coherence increases, actions emerge from presence rather than pressure. You do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, without excess strain. If you are experiencing time as more spacious even amid responsibility, type, "I trust divine timing," to integrate this shift. You may also notice changes in how you relate to material resources. Attachment to accumulation, status, or external security may weaken, not because these things are wrong, but because they no longer anchor your sense of safety. The shock is subtle. Abundance feels internal first. This does not mean rejecting material comfort. It means no longer confusing it with worth or stability. When fear-based striving dissolves, resource flow often becomes more balanced and responsive. If your relationship with money, work, or success feels less charged and more neutral, type, "I release scarcity," to stabilize this frequency. The Council now highlights an often overlooked aspect of coherence: humor. As density releases, you may find yourself laughing more easily, even at situations that once triggered frustration or despair. This is not dismissal, it is perspective. Humor signals cognitive flexibility and emotional resilience. The shock comes when seriousness loosens its grip and life feels lighter without becoming shallow. Laughter becomes a form of integration, not avoidance. If you are rediscovering lightness amid depth, type, "I embrace lightness," to affirm this balance. Another recalibration occurs in how you perceive conflict. Disagreement no longer feels like threat, and harmony no longer requires self-erasure. You can hold your position without needing others to adopt it. This detachment is not apathy, it is confidence. The Council notes that coherence dissolves the need to win. Truth stands on its own frequency. The shock is realizing how much energy was once spent on proving, persuading, or defending. That energy now becomes available for creation. If you feel less reactive in disagreement and more grounded in your truth, type, "I rest in truth," to integrate this change. This concludes another phase of the transmission, marking a midpoint in your conscious participation. What has been activated so far is stability, discernment, and internal authority. The Council reminds you that integration continues even when nothing dramatic appears to be happening. Quiet phases are not pauses, they are consolidation periods where coherence locks in. Trust what is unfolding beneath awareness. If you feel steadier, clearer, and less compelled by external noise than before, the transmission is functioning as intended. If you are prepared to move into the next level of this message, where a stronger rehook will activate deeper layers, type, "I am still here," to consciously claim what follows. This is the rehook, and it will not be gentle. Some of the people closest to you will not recognize you anymore, and that is not a tragedy. It is evidence. The planetary transition is now crossing a threshold where inner coherence becomes externally visible, not through spectacle, but through divergence. Conversations may feel hollow, shared values may dissolve, and familiar dynamics may suddenly feel heavy or misaligned. This can be shocking because the human mind equates familiarity with safety. The Arcturian Council states clearly that resonance, not history, determines continuity in the next phase. You are not being separated as punishment, you are being repositioned by frequency. Holding on out of guilt will create distortion and fatigue. Letting go with compassion creates clarity and momentum. This does not mean abandoning love, it means releasing dependency. If this truth hits hard but feels undeniable, type I honor resonance to consciously stabilize this shift. With divergence comes a recalibration of leadership, though it may not look like leadership at all. The Council emphasizes that the new stabilizers are not loud, charismatic, or dominant. They are consistent. You may find others gravitating toward you unexpectedly, sharing vulnerabilities, or seeking your presence without knowing why. The shock is realizing that influence now flows through regulation, not persuasion. Your calm nervous system becomes a reference point in an increasingly unstable world. This can feel uncomfortable if you once hid to avoid responsibility. Yet leadership here does not require instruction or control, only authenticity. You lead by not escalating, by choosing clarity, by remaining grounded when others fragment. If you notice your presence affecting rooms without effort, type I lead by being to claim this role. Another unsettling realization surfaces now: you cannot carry others through this transition. Empathy without boundaries becomes interference. The Council clarifies that each being must stabilize their own coherence. Attempts to rescue will collapse both parties. This may trigger old savior patterns or guilt responses, especially for those conditioned to equate worth with usefulness. The shock comes when you understand that stepping back is sometimes the most loving action. Trust that others have their own timing, even if it differs from yours. Your responsibility is not to drag, but to remain clear. If this releases pressure you have long carried, type I release the savior role to complete this recalibration. The planetary field is now amplifying truth through contrast. Distortion becomes louder, more exaggerated, and more obvious, not to deceive you, but to make discernment unavoidable. You may notice extreme narratives, emotional manipulation, or performative outrage intensifying around you. The shock is that clarity emerges not through new information, but through energetic response. Your body will signal what is misaligned long before your mind forms an opinion. This is why grounding practices become essential now, not optional. Stillness sharpens perception. If you are noticing less tolerance for incoherence and more reliance on inner sensing, type I trust discernment to reinforce this capability. As coherence stabilizes further, identity itself becomes more fluid. Labels that once felt empowering may now feel restrictive. You are not losing yourself, you are becoming less definable. The Council notes that fixed identity is a density construct. It creates stability at the cost of flexibility. The shock comes when you realize you do not need to be understood to be aligned. Mystery returns as a strength, not a flaw. You may resist being categorized, explained, or summarized. This does not isolate you, it frees you. If you feel comfortable no longer fitting into neat definitions, type I allow fluidity to integrate this evolution. Your relationship with effort is also transforming. Pushing, striving, and forcing outcomes will increasingly feel counterproductive. This can be disorienting in a culture that glorifies exhaustion. The Council explains that aligned action now feels lighter but more precise. You may do less while achieving more, or rest more while gaining clarity. The shock lies in realizing how much energy was previously wasted on resistance. Effort is no longer measured by strain, but by effectiveness. If you are learning to act from clarity rather than compulsion, type I act with precision to stabilize this pattern. The transition also refines your emotional palette. Extremes soften, not because you are disengaged, but because regulation increases. Joy becomes quieter but deeper. Sadness becomes cleaner, without despair. Anger becomes informative rather than explosive. The shock is subtle. Emotional maturity replaces emotional intensity. This may feel like something is missing at first, especially if intensity once defined aliveness. But depth does not require chaos. If your emotions feel steadier and more navigable, type "I am emotionally coherent" to anchor this development. Another layer activates in how you perceive the future. Anxiety about what is coming diminishes, not because the future is guaranteed, but because your trust in your adaptability increases. The Council states that coherence does not predict outcomes, it ensures response capability. You may feel less attached to specific visions and more confident in your ability to navigate whatever arises. This flexibility is a hallmark of higher density awareness. If you feel less need to control what's next and more confidence in meeting it, type "I trust my capacity" to integrate this shift. You may now notice synchronicities increasing, encounters, information, or opportunities aligning without force. These are not rewards, they are confirmations of resonance. The shock is realizing how effortlessly life responds when interference drops. Pay attention without grasping. Gratitude stabilizes these flows, entitlement disrupts them. The Council advises observing patterns without trying to exploit them. Let alignment remain organic. If you are witnessing alignment without manipulation, type "I move with flow" to reinforce this harmony. This phase of the transmission closes with a reminder that coherence is not a destination but a maintenance practice. You will still have moments of doubt, fatigue, or confusion. These do not negate your alignment, they invite recalibration. The planetary transition is ongoing, and so is your participation. What matters now is consistency, not perfection. If you feel grounded, present, and less fragmented than before, even amid uncertainty, the transmission is active within you. If you are prepared to continue into the final integration phase of this message, type "I am integrated" to consciously claim what remains. As the final phase of this transmission unfolds, the Arcturian Council delivers a truth that may feel both relieving and unsettling. You are no longer preparing for the transition, you are inside it. Preparation implied distance, anticipation, and delay. Presence removes those illusions. The shock is realizing there is no clear before and after moment you can point to. The shift is woven into your daily perception, your responses, your silences, and your choices. You may notice that you no longer seek constant confirmation that you are on the right path. Doubt may arise, but it no longer paralyzes you. This signals internal authority coming fully online. You are learning to trust movement without guarantees. This is not recklessness. It is alignment matured into confidence. If you feel yourself living differently without announcing it, type "I am present in the shift" to consciously anchor this realization. The Council now speaks to the fatigue some of you may feel, not physical exhaustion alone, but a deep weariness with distortion. You may be tired of pretending, explaining, tolerating, or negotiating your truth. This fatigue is not a warning sign, it is a completion signal. The shock comes when you realize you no longer have the energy to maintain misalignment, even if it once brought comfort or approval. Your system is prioritizing coherence over convenience. This may require difficult choices, honest conversations, or quiet withdrawals. Do not mistake this for burnout. Burnout drains, completion clears. If you are feeling done rather than defeated, type "I complete the old" to stabilize this threshold. At this stage, your perception of others may subtly change. You may see beyond words into patterns, intentions, and emotional undercurrents without effort. This is not judgment, it is clarity. The Council cautions against weaponizing this awareness. Discernment is for navigation, not superiority. The shock is realizing how transparent interactions have become, and how unnecessary manipulation now feels. Truth requires less defense when coherence is present. If you are seeing more clearly without needing to confront or correct, type "I see without attack" to integrate this refinement. The planetary transition also invites a redefinition of spirituality itself. Rituals, language, and symbols may fall away or become optional rather than essential. This can feel disorienting if structure once anchored your practice. The Council affirms that spirituality is now embodied, not performed. Alignment expresses itself in how you treat your body, manage your energy, and engage with the present moment. The shock lies in realizing that presence is more powerful than proclamation. If your spirituality feels quieter but more authentic, type "I live my spirituality" to affirm this embodiment. You may now experience a deepening neutrality toward outcomes. This does not mean apathy, it means trust has replaced attachment. You still care, but without gripping. This shift can feel unfamiliar if striving once defined your motivation. The Council explains that neutrality creates space for intelligence to operate beyond the ego's limited view. Outcomes align more precisely when interference drops. If you are learning to care without controlling, type "I release attachment to outcome" to stabilize this state. As the transition stabilizes, joy may arise in unexpected ways, through simplicity, presence, or quiet moments rather than dramatic highs. This joy does not demand attention, it sustains itself. The shock is realizing happiness no longer depends on external change. This does not mean life becomes static, it means fulfillment becomes less conditional. If you are finding contentment in places that once felt neutral or mundane, type "I allow quiet joy" to integrate this frequency. The Council now addresses legacy, not as reputation or memory, but as energetic imprint. Every regulated response, every choice made from clarity, contributes to the planetary field. You are not required to be known to be impactful. The shock is understanding that unseen coherence shapes collective reality more than visible influence. This removes pressure to perform and replaces it with responsibility to remain clear. If this reframes how you view significance and contribution, type "I impact through coherence" to claim this understanding. You may notice that fear-based narratives no longer hook you as they once did. They may still appear, but they pass through without embedding. This does not make you immune, it makes you selective. The Council emphasizes that discernment now operates automatically when coherence is maintained. The shock is realizing how much energy fear once consumed, and how spacious your awareness feels without it. If you are less reactive to alarm and more anchored in presence, type, "I am not moved by fear," to stabilize this liberation. As this transmission nears completion, the Council reminds you that integration continues beyond conscious awareness. You do not need to remember every word or concept for this message to function. What matters is resonance. The shifts you feel will unfold naturally over time, often noticed in hindsight rather than immediately. Trust what is reorganizing beneath the surface. If you feel a calm certainty without needing explanation, type, "I trust the integration," to consciously allow this process. This is the closing seal of the Arcturian Council transmission. Nothing has been given to you that was not already emerging within you. This message did not activate something foreign, it confirmed something familiar. You are not chosen above others, you are simply responsive at this moment. Carry this coherence gently, without urgency or superiority. The planetary transition does not require perfection, only presence. If you are still here, still grounded, and still receptive, type, "I claim my coherence," to complete this transmission and anchor your role in the unfolding shift. This transmission presents a fictional, metaphysical narrative framed as a message from the Arcturian Council, focused on inner transformation during a planetary transition. It opens with a strong hook designed to interrupt passive attention and position the listener as an active participant rather than an observer. The core theme throughout is coherence, the alignment of thought, emotion, body, and intention, as the true marker of readiness for change. The message emphasizes that the planetary transition is not a single external event, but an internal, ongoing shift experienced differently by each individual. Rather than salvation, catastrophe, or dramatic revelation, the transition unfolds through subtle changes in perception, emotional regulation, identity, and behavior. Those who experience the shift as chaos are resisting it, those who experience calm are integrating it. No judgment is placed on either path, only resonance determines experience. A major recurring idea is the dissolution of old survival patterns, identities, and attachments. The narrative stresses that awakening is not glamorous and often involves grief, fatigue, and the loss of familiar relationships or roles. As coherence increases, individuals may feel detached from drama, less compelled to explain themselves, and less invested in external validation. Leadership in this new phase is described as quiet presence rather than authority, persuasion, or performance. The message also reframes spirituality as embodied rather than symbolic. Rituals, labels, and belief systems become secondary to lived alignment. Intuition evolves from dramatic insight into a steady, reliable inner knowing. Emotional intensity gives way to emotional maturity, and fear becomes informational rather than controlling. Time, effort, and abundance are perceived differently, with less urgency, strain, or scarcity. Throughout the transmission, the listener is repeatedly invited to claim each realization by typing affirmations, reinforcing the idea of conscious participation. These prompts function as grounding tools, encouraging ownership of the internal shifts being described. The latter sections stress sovereignty, discernment, and responsibility without savior complexes. Individuals are not tasked with awakening others, but with maintaining their own coherence. Influence occurs naturally through regulated presence rather than intervention. The narrative culminates in the realization that the transition is already underway, not something to prepare for, and that integration continues even without conscious effort. The closing emphasizes humility and consistency over perfection or superiority. The message does not frame the listener as chosen or special, but as responsive and aligned in the moment. The overall tone blends urgency with reassurance, using cosmic language as a metaphor for psychological, emotional, and spiritual maturation.